Hi, welcome back to the section of word count. In this section, we'll see how to write a driver code that executes your mapper and reducer. So, we are importing few things that are required for our driver code. One thing is fs.path, because one primary thing we got to consider here is when we are executing some MapReduce, okay, the input should be present in your HDFS, whereas your output also should be present in your also should be created in your HDFS, right? So in order to make your Java code understand that your input will be in your HDFS and output should be created in HDFS, we are importing something called org apache.hadoop.fs.path, which is nothing but your file system path. Okay, and then we are importing something called int-writable, text, which are your data types, and we are importing something called file input format and file output format. Okay, these are basically required to specify what is the input format of your file and what is the output format of your file. And we are using something called job client, job configuration. These two things are these two things as well as your tool runner are basically used to run your MapReduce job. And in order to set your configuration file, to write your driver code, we are using a superclass called configured, and we are using something called an interface called tool. Now let's look at our class word count. We have something called public class word count, which extends configured and implements tool. Okay, so configured is my superclass which I am inheriting the properties from, and I have something called tool which is an interface, right? So I'm overriding a method called run, okay, which accepts string of arguments as my input and throws an exception if something goes wrong, right? So this run method will first have an if loop which accepts two arguments, only two arguments. It will throw an error if you are passing more than two arguments or less than two arguments. Okay, what error it will throw? Simply it will throw an usage error that boss, you got to pass an input directory and output directory to your driver class. That's what it tells. Okay, so that's the reason why we are using some if loop over here to validate your number of records, or sorry, to validate number of arguments. And then we are setting one object called conf, which takes your word count, the class name of your driver class. And once you are passing your driver class as an input to this configuration conf object, we are setting the job name, because we know that a job tracker sets the job name for each of your particular task invoked by the client, right? So in this case, we are giving the job name as class name dot or object name. Okay, the current object name we are giving. In order to get that, we are using something called this keyword here, right? So after declaring your job name, we are telling that what is your file input. It's nothing but the first argument which we pass as a command line to your word count class, and the second argument whatever we pass to word count class is nothing but your output path, right? And you are also telling what is the mapper code and what is the reducer code to my word count, which is the driver class. So word mapper is my mapper class and some reducer is my reducer class, so I'm setting those properties as well. And I'm setting what is the input output key and output value of my mapper class. Text and int writable are the output of my mapper which I'm declaring. Similarly, I have text and int writable as an output key and value data types of my reducer. That's also I'm declaring here. Finally, I'm running my job conf, which is my conf, using something called job client dot run job. Once it gets successfully completed, I'm returning 0. So how am I running this particular run method is using obviously through my main method, which is nothing but public static void main string of args which throws exception, okay, which is running my method run using tool runner by passing word count as its one of the argument and arguments as another argument. Arguments are nothing but your input file and output directory we are passing to it. And finally we are collecting the exit code of this particular driver code. Yeah, now that we have seen the driver code, we have seen the mapper code, and we have seen the reducer code. Let's quickly see how to create a jar file. A jar file is nothing but combining your driver, mapper and reducer. Let's have a look at that. So in order to create a jar file, first thing you got to do is create an project. So I'm creating a project using file new Java project. I'm giving the project name as word count explanation. Finish. And then I'm creating a package. So package is pretty much required for any Java code. So I'm creating it here. Package. So package name would be org dot something called abc my wc, which is my word count. Just creating that package. So inside my package I'll create three classes. Yeah, one would be my word mapper. I'll give the name here and just click on finish. Yeah, and second thing would be my sum reducer. Finish. And third thing would be my driver class, which is nothing but my word count. Finish. Okay, I'll just copy these codes there from reducer to okay. We have faced few issues here. There are few errors that are being thrown, but you could observe that whatever that we are importing of inbuilt to Hadoop, that is throwing error. We'll see how to fix that. Okay, so I'm closing this. No. Word mapper I'm taking in. I'm just putting it here so that I can close this as well. Word count I'm copying it here. Yeah. So how to get rid of these errors? Simple. You just click on this any class which we had created, right click on it, go to build path and go to configure build path. Right, you got to add all your Hadoop libraries. You download it from apache.com. okay, you add it to your Eclipse and then you add your external jars. Okay, I have added it through my user lib hadoop -2.20 path. I have added all my jars there. So I'm just selecting all the jars to my Eclipse. Okay. So when I click on OK, and when I go and click my refresh, okay, anyways, before clicking on refresh itself, I got rid of all the errors. So all my errors are gone. Yeah. Once I'm done with my errors, what I'll do is I'll just create a jar file. For creating jar file, I'll got to go to export path. Yeah, Java jar file. click on next, and then on my desktop I'll create my jar file. My desktop word count expln dot jar. I'll just give expl. Yeah, my jar file has been done. So this is my jar file. So what I do is I'll open a terminal. Yeah, so I'll just create some input file, word count expl input.txt. What I'm gonna do is, hello world, this is Hadoop tutorial. Just to find the word count, what I'm doing is I'm just copy pasting these two things again, so that we'll get two words for each and each hello, each word we'll get two counts actually, right? I'm just saving this. Like I said, you got to store it in your HDFS. So I'm just, before executing your MapReduce, you got to put this into HDFS. So Hadoop fs hyphen put this particular file into user Surya path. Just check if my word input is there. Yes, my input is there. Okay, now let's go to my desktop folder and just list what are all the jar files that are present there. I have this particular path. I wanted to move this to my home path. I'll just move it. Okay, now I'll execute my word count example. It's simple. Sorry. So we'll use something like Hadoop jar, your jar name. This is the syntax. How do you execute your any MapReduce? First you do give something called Hadoop space jar space your jar name. Then you got to give your driver class, which is my word count. So in order to give the word count driver class, you got to name it as org.abc.wc, which is your package name. This is my package name dot word count. This is my class name, right? And then your input would be user Surya word count explanation input.txt, and your output would be user Surya word count explanation output. So this is where your output would get created, right? Then just type in enter. The time your MapReduce is running. See here, total jobs that are running are 1. Okay, your job client had invoked, right? And the total percentage of your mapper is 0 and reducer is 0. Let's wait for some time to get your MapReduce done. Now my mapper is done by 100%. Yeah, once the reducer is done, we are done with our word count. There you go, your reducer is done. So we got some details here. It's like how many reduce input records, how many map output records, all the stuff will be there. This is a general log file. So we'll go to my output file, output folder, and see the actual output. Yeah, this is my part 000 file. I'll just give a cat. There you go. You got your output. Hadoop 2, hello 2, this 2, tutorial 2, word 2, world 2, and is 2. Everything is sorted, and you got your count as